Numinous Podcast with Carmen Spaniola.
Hi there, and welcome to the Numinous Podcast, where we have interesting conversations with everyday folks about the mystery of life. I'm your host, Carmen Spaniola, joining you from the lands of the Insilkshin-speaking peoples of the Okanagan Nations on our small farm just outside of a small town known as Summerland, BC. If you're new to the podcast, you may not know that my family was rent-evicted by our landlord from our urban homestead in Victoria, BC, and that's how we found ourselves living on my in-laws' land here in the Okanagan Valley. We looked for another place to live in Victoria for over a year, but found that because we'd been in our home for about a decade, the rental market had become so expensive. I mean, it was already at the very upper end a decade ago for us, but the market had become so expensive that we couldn't afford to live in Victoria anymore. And even looking at rentals up to 4 hours away, we still couldn't find anything that we could afford that could also accommodate our need for 2 bedrooms because we have an adult disabled child. Plus, we had dogs and cats, so we either had to give up our pets and gardens and move into an apartment building or a basement suite, or we had to leave the island. Now, here on my in-laws' land, there is no place currently where my husband and my kid and I can live. So we currently live in RVs on the land while we are working to make some other buildings livable. The work is taking much, much longer than we anticipated, and we can see, realistically, it's going to be a couple more years. There are upsides to living here, absolutely, for sure. And we are making the best of a very tough situation. But we aren't the only people who were displaced by our landlord's decision to sell his property to a real estate developer. He actually owned 3 houses side by side with a total of 7 units, rental units. So about 16 inhabitants. Some, kids were just about to go to college, that sort of thing. Obviously would have hoped to have lived at home. Anyway, almost all of us families and couples were relocated. We had to move, and we worked with the real estate developer who offered a moving stipend. So why am I telling you this? Well, here's the update. In the end, the development deal fell through for our landlord and that developer. So our landlord just rented the units to new tenants at higher rates. It's just a classic capitalism story. It was like a tremendous amount of stress for a year. The stress of moving, the expense of it, all of that. Anyway, a classic capitalist story because the landlord's supposed loss is still a win. The capitalist wins, and all the lives impacted for years, multiple generations, like parents and their kids, but also this kind of thing, needing to either pay more to find somewhat equivalent housing, or in our case, literally have to leave a bioregion. It's the trajectory of a life completely interrupted 16 times over. That's not even a footnote in the story of the capital that our landlord still sits on. I'm sure you, dear listeners, are as sick of the story of capitalism as I am. I'm sick of it. I don't want it. I want something else. And part of the story of capitalism is that there's this protagonist in everyone else's background. The landlord, he had a dream, he had a vision, he had a goal. Everyone else just background. What I love about our guest today is the way she foregrounds what capitalism would background, the way she's in relationship with the larger story and the myriad stories, not just a singular story going on all around us, the way she, within her urban environment, not only seeks to decenter capitalism and the trajectory and momentum of capitalism and the colonizer, but also just the human-centered story My guest today is Nadine Nakagawa, an organizer, activist, intersectional feminist, clinical counselor, and two-term city councilor. She's also the co-founder of the Feminist Campaign School, which supports underrepresented people to run for and serve in elected office. She is also the author of the forthcoming book, Molt, Murmur, Contemplations on Nature, which is now available for pre-order from Ninth House Press. Our conversation was recorded over a month ago, and so we were still using the working title of her book, which was Imaginal Discs. It's actually the title of just one of the essays in this little book. I say essays, but they're not exactly essays. It's more like a compendium of prose poems and musings and like tiny immersions into an animist, anticapitalist, interconnected worldview. I know this book will resonate with activists, environmentalists, animists, artists, pagans, witches, people developing secure attachment with beings and places of the natural world. It's a book for people trying to find their way out of the narrative of a white capitalist, imperialist, patriarchal overculture. And it's for those people who are looking for the exit from that narrative by entering communion with the natural world. And when you hear more from our guest today, I think you'll see why. I think this book is going to be wildly popular when it arrives. So Nadine, what identities do you lead with?
I identify as a cisgender woman, and I am a person who is mixed race. So I identify as Hafu or Hapa, which is how the Japanese Canadian community tends to, mixed race Japanese Canadian community tends to identify ourselves. I'm also queer and currently non-disabled. It's also important to me because I'm in politics and I get to make decisions about housing. I'm also a renter, and that's an identity that if you live in Metro Vancouver, one of the big urban centers, does feel quite relevant.
Absolutely. We just moved here to my husband's family's land, but I would often identify myself like, and I am a renter because it said so much about what I was dealing with as somebody living in the downtown urban core of Victoria, BC. This part of Canada, I don't think a lot of people outside of this region realize that we're like as expensive as other global cities. So thank you for mentioning that because it really tells me a lot about your day in, day out. Do you want to say a little bit about where you are in the world and what your relationship to that land is? How did you come to be where you are?
So I live in New Westminster, which is the unceded territory of Hunkaminam speaking people, and I'm a settler on this territory. I grew up on Vancouver Island, on the territory of the Nanaimo. And obviously, at the time when I was growing up, we didn't talk about connections to land and whose territory we're on. So that's things I've had to learn as an adult. But I moved to New West after graduating from university because it was kind of cheaper rent, access to transit, all those things. And I became deeply connected to the community, and I really and became very engaged with the community, which is how I got into politics as well. Where I'm sitting right now, I can see the Fraser River or the Stalo from my window, and Hunkaminam, the language group of the people whose land that I'm on, is the downriver dialect of a larger language family, Halkomelem. And it's such a good reminder of the connection between language and river and people, that it's downriver dialect. It's connected to this part of the river. So, yeah, I landed here quite by accident. New Westminster is also the original colonial capital, so we very thoroughly displaced the people whose lands we're on. And it's a big learning to try and re-understand those connections to land because this community, this city, as original colonial capital, really was invested in making them invisible.
And you have invested your time and your life in becoming very active in politics. Can you give us a little sense of what that was like before you went into politics? Did you ever think you would run for anything in public office?
I did. So when I was 18, my family likes to bring this up. When I was 18, I told people I was going to be Prime Minister of Canada. And I was always interested in politics. I liked federal politics, and I volunteered in an election in Nanaimo at the time. And I will say that like New West didn't, or like, sorry, politics didn't love me back. They were,
Mm.
the community didn't really welcome me. I think they didn't know what to do with a person like me. I didn't look like other people who were engaged at that time. And so I kind of got away from that. I got into nonprofit work. So I worked in like a homeless shelter for women and children. And as as I was helping women try and find housing, this is like 15 years ago, 16 years ago. I was trying to help them find housing, and it was nearly impossible at that time. And even if you did, by some miracle, they were able to find housing, there's 10 other women lined up waiting to come in. So at a certain point, it was like, ooh, this helping individuals is really important. And also, this system is really deeply not working for people. So I started relooking at politics again and got engaged as a volunteer, volunteered on elections, worked for a local MLA. And I worked on a local election in 2014 in which the entire team was white and they were mostly men. And they were very successful. They all got elected, that entire team. And I thought, I don't think I'm going to support a team that looks like this again.
Can I
And
ask you
so
how old you were?
I was in 2014, I was 31.
Okay.
So I wasn't that young.
Yeah.
Um, but I was working in nonprofit at the time. And so, yeah, supported this team, thought, no, the community of New West does not look like that. So decided that I wanted to run. And I volunteered and did a lot of community organizing to get myself feeling like I was qualified because obviously, well, not obviously, actually, there had never been a racialized person elected in the city of New West, despite it being an incredibly diverse community. I had not seen anyone like myself at that table before. No one was openly queer. And so when I ran in 2018, I was really unsure whether or not people would put a check mark next to the last name Nakagawa. And I had a community of people supporting me. We were successful. But really, really felt that piece of underrepresentation and the vulnerability of going into the space and people assuming I'm somebody's assistant or, not speaking to me when we're at the meeting, they speak to the other people in the room. And I've also started a campaign school to help underrepresented people to run as well. So it's called the Feminist Campaign School. It's for anybody who's underrepresented in whatever part of their identity. That could be class, race, disability, whatever it might be. And also teams of people who want to support those folks, because we know elections is one person's name on the ballot, but it is actually a team of people. It's a community, best case scenario. So trying to support politics to be a little bit more diverse and a little bit more representative of the communities.
And does that organization that you founded just help people in the region where you live, or is it online? Like who? I'm like, I know people who should do that. Who,
Yes,
who do you
send them my
help?
way. No, it's all across BC. We've even had people from Alberta and Ontario come to our campaign school, and it is online. And we change the times up. We'll have it in the evenings or on weekend mornings so that different people can attend. And we really try and set them up. Like campaigns are so opaque. And politics are so opaque. And so I have the opportunity in my job to speak to like a lot of young people who are interested in politics or policy. And they'll often say, well, I don't feel qualified. Yeah, that's because the system makes you feel like that. That really serves the people sitting at the table. If most people feel like, oh, I couldn't do your job, well, that's just great for me because then I'll just stay here forever. I'm the only one who's qualified to do it. So, really trying to demystify it. And we send people away with a whole campaign plan and talk to them about all the things that they need to know to be able to put their names forward. So, yeah, if you know people, please send them our way.
Absolutely. And do you find, and apologies to all of the American listeners, I love you. Most of the people I speak with on a daily basis in my work are American. So I'm exposed to quite a lot of Americentrism in political discourse. But are you noticing, like 2018 was a while ago,
Hmm.
there's a lot of that has changed in politics, not only in America, but also in Canada with a drift to the right. are you noticing that even at the sort of local level that things have changed from 2018 to now? Or for you, from your vantage point, is this just kind of the same as it always was, but just more visible?
Well, I mean, with another hat on, I also do like equity, diversity, inclusion work. And certainly I'll say that, you know, the world, Canada, the US discovered, I say that in quotations, racism in 2020. Oh my gosh, collectively, we've learned about residential schools. Obviously, Indigenous people, it's in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report from 2015. So, but collectively, settlers learned about this and obviously learned about racism with the very public killing of George Floyd. So, a lot of what existed as the experience of like racialized people came more to the public notice at that time. And so in 2018, 2019, when I was first elected, and I would talk about things like racism, people would be like, oh, no, 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 that doesn't exist here. And then in 2020, people went, oh, okay, that does exist here. And I thought, oh my gosh, here we go. Look at us. And then, around 2022, we started to see a real backlash against that, where if you talked about racism, you're racist. And I've
Mm.
been called racist and divisive for talking about experiences of racism. And so I think actually there has been this simmering of racism and right-wing, beliefs in Canada for a really long time. And I think it came to our public notice and then it was given permission. And we've seen that from the States. I think that has come up here from there, that where there was things that were never permissible to say before, and now you're allowed to say them quite, with your full chest. So I will say from my perspective, it's gotten really bad. The misinformation has gotten really bad locally, which is quite shocking. The using anger and fear as political tactics has gotten worse. At local government level, we didn't see that before, really, to the extent that we see it now. And it's quite effective. So, what we call right-wing politics, like I also refer to as populism. And so I think that it is very much alive and present in our communities in a way that's really troubling.
Mm. And can you give us, you also have another hat, which is a counseling hat, a mental health support and therapeutic helper. And so with the campaign school, do you have that lens as well? Like, and so therefore, considering this is the social milieu that you are going out into, what do you say to people who uh, arrive with some kind of altruism or inspiration, and how do you support that while also gently giving them some self-care or some safety information about what it's going to be like to be more visible in the community as a targeted or marginalized person?
hmm It's a really good question. And that's why through Campaign School, myself and the other co-founder, Trudy, we we have a bit of an issue, a moral conundrum in that we feel that there should be more representation in politics. And also, we know that when people are stepping into those positions, they were not built by or for them, and so they experience harm. So, what do we do if we're asking people to step into spaces that we know will be harmful? So, we also have a research project, which is funded by the federal government, Women and Gender Equality Canada, to do research. So, we put out a paper in 2024 called the Barriers Report. We have a follow-up paper that's coming out imminently right now, actually called The Barriers Remain. And it's really about a lot of times when we talk about like women, let's say in politics or underrepresented people, is that we spend a lot of time lamenting or sharing horror stories. Okay, there's a space for that. Maybe it feels cathartic. There's also a space for saying, well, then what do we do about it? We're no longer willing to accept it. And somehow we don't often get there very often. So the barriers report is really focused around here are some things we can do to increase at a policy level safety and the ability to serve for people who are underrepresented. So it's things like caregiving leave, which just got brought in by the BC government. It's things like accountability standards, again, just got brought in by the BC government. We've argued for more. So I think that there's structural things that we can do to actually increase safety. But we also do talk a lot about who's supporting you, who on your team is like monitoring your social media. What are practices around this? If, for example, people start coming after you, who's gonna come to events with you? Who's gonna support you in that? Often we default to the people we live with, our family, maybe our very closest friends, and they haven't necessarily consented to doing that work. They're maybe not well positioned to do it. Often, if we're getting called names, like our partners don't will be upset by that too. So finding somebody else who actually does have the skills to support you, and then what are we doing at a community level? So we've had people, for example, run who are or who come through campaign school who are like trans, and they want to run in their community, and they also know, yeah, like that's phenomenal, and also transphobes are going to come for them from all over, and the other trans people in their community are going to be witness to that. So
Mhm.
how do we actually try and set up again protocols and practices that will increase safety for everybody?
Mhm. Mhm. My mind is kind of popping off with like people I want you to connect with and
Hmm.
ways I want to collaborate and things I want to do to amplify and we'll get to that. Did you come from a political family at all? Are you the first person to run in your family or is this kind of in your blood?
No, I was definitely the first person to run in my family. Like I come from a very working class family, and like my mom would not tell me growing up who she voted for. I know now who she voted for, but she wouldn't tell me at the time. And I would say like my dad is quite conservative, actually. He was big on I'm not conservative in case you can't tell. Um, and so I don't share their politics. And well, they paid attention to politics and they voted, which is, actually a really big thing because not everyone
Mhm.
does. And we're much more likely to vote actually if our parents vote. So but no, absolutely, they did not come from a background of people who had run. And in fact, they come from backgrounds of displacement. Like
Mhm.
my grandparents were interned during the Second World War. And then on my mom's side, uh, her family is Doukhobor, and so they were also interned in the Kootenays during the same time. So
Mhm.
they come from people who I think were thoroughly displaced and broken away from feeling like they could have a political voice. So absolutely not. In fact, there's not many people from Japanese Canadian community who have run for office or who have served in office, because all sorts of complicated stuff around model minority and perceptions around Japanese people. But no, absolutely not. It's just something that I don't know. I don't know where I get it from. I just care, I guess.
Mhm. I'm glad you brought up the internment because I was this was in the back of my mind as we started speaking was like, wow, I wonder how the ancestral healing is going because I can only imagine that there's a lot of pain in that lineage still and like the I don't know, like kind of I would think of it as like a disorganized attachment with your own government. Like,
Mm,
that's tough. And I know, I'm sure every Indigenous person who is sitting in public office in Canada is the same thing. Like, do I really want to be a representative of the crown? And we've had friends who have been very successful community organizers who are Indigenous who have been recruited many times or attempted to recruit into politics who've decided that they can't because there hasn't been enough truth, there hasn't been enough reconciliation.
mhm.
So given that you didn't have that political vent, my sort of other half of it then is like, okay, well, we're here to talk about your book and about your creative process. Did you come from a creative family then? Like how did you come to be who you are, Nadine?
It's Yeah, it's a good question. I wouldn't say I come from a creative family. Again, I think because my family was pretty working class and my mom worked in credit unions her entire life and my dad was a logger for a big portion of his life. I, no, I don't think creativity was something. And of course, then if we go into stereotypes around East Asian communities and Japanese communities included in that, I played the piano growing up, but I did Royal Conservatory. You play it like this, no creativity. You do some math drills, like it was very practical, I would say. So how I came to be this person is I guess I relearned myself as an adult that I didn't see myself as a creative person. I have trouble describing myself as that now. And so I think it was just an exploration of what do I actually enjoy rather than what do I think I should enjoy?
What are some of the things you actually enjoy?
So I actually enjoy animals a lot. So I absolutely love any animal. You know, if I see a dog, I'm going to be smiling at the dog. I was just delighting in some crows as I was walking earlier this morning. So I love animals and I love going out for walks and being in nature. I love noticing things. I don't know if that's a hobby, but I love noticing things. And I paint. So I've taken up watercolor and gouache. Gouache is very familiar to very similar to watercolor if you're not familiar. I wouldn't say I am talented in the visual arts, but I do it. Um, and yeah, and writing is something that I didn't really think I was creative about, but I took some creative writing courses, over 10 years ago and just decided that I like it. And therefore I'm able to do it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing is that we have such high standards around what makes you an artist, and there's some barrier that people feel the need to make, and it's like it's kind of that difference of I do rather than I am. So I do art, so I'm an artist.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I really resonate with that. I was finishing a manuscript just this week, my manuscript, and was saying to my husband, like, I know I'm not like a great writer. I know that. I'm not like, any kind of eloquent. I'm not gonna my books are not gonna go down in history as some of the most representative of the most articulate writers ever. However, I really enjoy animism and I really enjoy attachment and I really enjoy collapse. And I can follow a thought pretty far with it. I can construct, I still remember my, grade 9 essay writing. So there's still that. So I really resonate with that idea of like, yeah, but I am an animist. I move through the world in attachment relationships with the more than human. And I am an animist. And I think I want to share that with people. And you know, I would be doing a disservice for to the great love that seems to channel through me if I felt like I had to be so much better just to be able to share it with people. So I appreciate that you're bringing it down to kind of the every person kind of level. That said, everyone, I read this submission and was like, wow, this is a book I really, really want to read. And Taranay and Trez and I all kind of passed it around. We're very excited. We have a working title still for your book. We're still massaging this, and that is Imaginal Discs.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you about the book in a moment, but can you just tell us about Imaginal Discs to start with? What is this concept?
So Imaginal Discs, I don't even know how I came upon this, but it is so okay. So people love the metaphor of like a butterfly. You start as a caterpillar, you go in the cocoon, and la, you're a beautiful butterfly. And this metaphor for transformation. And the thing about this, it's a great metaphor, but it's so deeply flawed because you don't go in the cocoon and are like, oh, la, here I come. You actually go in the cocoon and dissolve yourself. I can only imagine it's painful. I've never asked the caterpillar, I guess the butterfly or moth, but it's a really, really intensive process. It's gooey, it's gross, it's not like a beautiful, soft transformation. And so imaginal discs are the part of the caterpillar that goes into the cocoon. The body dissolves. The imaginal discs are the part of the body that then remakes the entire caterpillar or moth from those pieces. And so it's like this blueprint for something completely different than what it was. And it's kind of like the only existing part that remains. So I don't know, I find that a really interesting concept, like much more interesting, I think, than this really, really cliche moth to butterfly transformation. And I also am really interested in boundaries. Like, I don't believe in boundaries. I think everything's subjective. I don't, like, I've been known to say that math is subjective. So I think that this idea of imaginal discs was really, really inspiring to me. It was also the first piece that I wrote for the book, and was very, very different from the things that I was writing at the time. At the time, I was writing a lot of much more memoir type pieces, and I had the opportunity to be part of the BIPOC Writers Connect which is through the Writers Union of Canada, where you apply and you're chosen by a mentor potentially, where they choose, I think, two mentees. And at the time, my mentor was Kai Chang Tom. Ooh, my God, Kai Chang Tom chose me as a mentee. Ooh, that's like exciting in and of itself. So we sat and we talked for like half an hour or 45 minutes about the first piece that I submitted, which was a memoir, which was a memoir style piece, an essay about a trauma. And she gave me some really good feedback on it. And then I kind of said, I submitted two pieces because you're allowed to have two pieces. I said, the other piece, Imaginal Discs, we didn't haven't talked about. And her feedback to me was because it's perfect. And I said, oh my God, it's perfect. And it really struck me that in writing Imaginal Discs, it's a totally different style, and it's quite different from most of the other pieces in the book as well. It's much more poetry. Um, it's something that I enjoyed. Like I really enjoyed the process of writing it. I enjoy reading it. If somebody else had read it, I would have been like, "Oh, that's cool." And so I think it really like shone for me that way that I think a lot of other pieces that I write, they just feel too obvious to me or they feel too much in my voice, whereas this felt like it was interesting to me. And so for that reason, I thought I will try writing more kind of pieces along this line, and then wrote apparently a whole book of them.
Okay, well, so tell us more about your book. Like what is it about? How did that creative process go after you kind of came out with this banger and this great feedback? And how do you follow that up? What was it like writing the whole book?
How do you follow that up? Yeah. So I would say that the book is about, so I was thinking about it as lessons for activists because I do a lot of activism and community organizing in my life and lessons for activists from nature. But I think it's broader than that. I don't think you have to identify as an activist to get something out of the book. I think it's really just about, let's pay attention to nature and let's think about it deeply about like the beauty and the wisdom of nature. My process for writing it was I actually wrote it a number of years ago, a lot of the pieces. And I was in this process where I was writing with a friend, and she was working on a book. We had started writing those memoir pieces together. We were going to do a joint book. And then we're like, this is a little too traumatizing. Like, it's not, who wants to read this? They're just going to be not feeling good afterwards. So we kind of went our separate ways as far as the writing project goes. This person, and we would start by kind of just like jamming out and eating some sushi or some noodles and just talking about the world and then kind of quieting down and then just writing some pieces. She's now the editor, I can't remember what she calls herself, but she's this essentially the boss lady of Indigenews, Eden Fine Day, and she's incredible. And so I really benefited from having her brilliance in just talking about the world and really nurturing, I think, this part of myself and also my like vision and my analysis of the way that I see the world. And then I would just sort of think about something that I like moss or shells or feathers or something like that, and just do some research and think about what I took from them. And it's sometimes kind of more obvious. Like I think my piece about moss is a little bit more obvious. I think the thing about feathers, much less obvious, a much more abstract connection. But really just I find a lot of flow in writing these pieces.
Hmm. I have described your book to people as braiding sweetgrass for riot girls. And they're always like, "Oh my God, so cool! I want to read it." I'm like, "Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's so great." I love that you are friends with and influenced by Eden Fine Day of Indigenews. Love that newsletter.
Mhm.
Like so great. And actually, one of your fellow authors in the catalog in the cohort quotes Indigenous quite a bit in her newsletters and might end up in the book as well. So lovely overlaps. So when we foreground topics of interest and topics kind of adjacent to this, right? Like collapse resilience or eco psychology, even climate distress, and co regulation with the natural world. Who are your closest other than human allies at this time? And I'd love to hear like what's comforting you about that, about those relationships, but also what concerns you.
Mm. Well, I live with two cats, And I tell you, living with cats is so humbling in so many ways. Um, because they're certainly not dogs. They're not like excited to see you in that same way. Um, you're sort of very peripheral to their life. And I think that is the lesson is that we are so deeply concerned about humanity's future on this planet. And, obviously I want future generations to survive, but also that only really matters if humanity is the center of the planet. And I don't think it is. Um, so I think the inspirations for me are they change any given day. Again, I think just by noticing, you can find inspiration anywhere. So the other day I was walking through a park and it was the time of day for the crows to fly home, which I love. It's like my favorite thing in the world. And these crows are all flying overhead, going to wherever it is that they roost. And I kind of said out loud, I said, I wonder if these crows know that I love them. And then I thought, no, they don't know and they don't care. They do not care. They are going about being crows. They care that their partner loves them. They care that their kids are going to help them take care of the next generation of kids. They do not care about me at all. And that is so refreshing in so many ways. To remember that again, like yeah, we're struggling up here, but also like lichen's okay. Lichen's
Mhm.
still on that tree. Um, so I think yeah, I think it depends on the day, but I think there's inspiration and support everywhere.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a misanthrope. I'm not a person who's like, you know, doesn't want humans to thrive, but I don't think human futurity is my highest aim for why I'm concerned about climate collapse, you know? There's so much more that's just so miraculous that it just, yeah. Can I share like a tiny little visitation or engagement I had today that was like very
Yes.
rare? Okay, so I'm new settler in Seal Okanagan territory, three generations in southern Vancouver Island from the Cowichan. And so I have been through like 2 years of lament and depression. And basically, just this is not my ecosystem, the high alpine desert. But this was my year of positive mental attitude because I was like, Carmen, you got to learn to love the earth in all her faces. And you know, you got to love the one you're with, right? And so I was like, I'm just going to let myself feel the beauty. I felt like every time I saw the sandhill cranes go overhead or the ravens, I felt like I was betraying my homelands, like I was forgetting or something. I'm getting over that this year. There's constantly visitations and encounters. But something happened today that has never happened before that I never would have imagined in my life. We have an electric golf cart. I was driving it back from feeding the horses this morning, and this bird flew in a very different flight pattern than I've ever seen. It was it was this it was small, but it was bigger than like a little songbird. And so I was like, grouse? Like it was very spotted and brown, and it alighted and it was in front of me and I was looking at its back. Could not tell what it was. Bigger than starlings, bigger than that, but I couldn't figure out. It was not a hawk. It was smaller than that, maybe. I slowed down, Nadine. It turned around and looked at me. It was a burrowing owl.
Oh,
It was a burrowing owl, which for people who don't know what that is, it's like a teeny tiny owl. It's fully grown, but it's smaller than a chicken. Like it's quite small. And when I tell you, I gasped out loud. It looked at me and then it took off again. And I've never even imagined I would see a real live burrowing owl in my life. And so that was like one of the most magical things. And basically, I like came in, had to wake my husband up because, of course, it was very early. And essentially, it was like we were both like, wow, like we have been blessed by the gods. I was like, I know, this is a lucky day.
oh
It,
my
it was very
gosh.
special.
Yeah, and owls flies like so silently too, so they're harder to maybe notice.
Yes.
Ooh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
That made me think I wanted to add to this list hummingbirds. I love hummingbirds. Like my number one skill on the planet is spotting hummingbirds. If you go for a walk with me, we will see a hummingbird. I don't care what time of year. Um, and I love them. They are so audacious. Like they're so beautiful if you catch them in the light and they'll chase off anybody. Like they're just I dream of being a hummingbird and just chasing somebody away. Like get out of my territory. I'm tiny and
Yeah.
I'm gonna dive bomb you.
Like so fast and so and
Yeah.
again and again and
Yeah.
again. Are you also good at spotting their nests?
Oh, I've only ever sp okay, so I've seen three hummingbird nests in my life, and maybe four actually. And that's hard. That is a
That's very hard.
gift. That's a
Yeah,
gift.
that's very hard. I've only seen one that I guess had fallen off and a child came and of course it's my kid is very good at spotting animal spotting anywhere in
Oh,
urban or forest or I oh kill to have that skill. Yeah, so good. So I'm curious, this is like me kind of going into my collapse brain here. Given your love of animals and the land and all of it, I have to imagine that you also have a certain kind of background hum of climate distress. You've been in planning, you've worked in regional politics. I'm sure you're like very aware of climate concerns. So I'm curious, which like hard skills and which soft skills then are you cultivating to navigate the rest of your life? Like, are you always going to live in the city? That would be certain kinds of skills. Do you dream of being in the country? What's your kind of collapse approach these days?
since I grew up on Vancouver Island, and I grew up in Nanaimo, it's not like that's like a small hamlet, but I would like to have more connection to land. Like I live on the 18th floor and I feel very disconnected from land. I am disconnected. I'm floating up in the sky. And so I would like to have more of a relationship with the trees and the plants that I'm living near. And so I do see myself living somewhere less urban. New West is, if you've ever been, it's incredibly urban. Like it's the center of Metro Vancouver. It's very, yeah,
Mhm.
very dense. And so I would like to do that. So I have a little community garden plot. So I grow vegetables. I'm a bit of a chaotic gardener. Like if you like neat, orderly rows, no, I am like they're going everywhere. I don't like to like what is it called? Cull them. Like I like to just let them grow. So thin, that's what it's called. I don't like
Thin.
to thin the seedlings. I like to just I want all the seedlings to exist. So it ends up quite crowded. So I'm learning gardening, I guess I would say. Other skills I think are around cultivating community because again, we are not disconnected from each other. So having other people that I can care for and that care for me is really, really important. That's the most beautiful thing I think that I have in New West is this community of care. Um, can I add, I don't know if I can swear on your podcast,
You
but
can.
shit talking people, like, like you just need people to like be able to vent and say the ugly things or make inappropriate jokes because like honestly, just people who get you because it is really tough. And sometimes if we don't laugh, I would do a lot more crying. And then I think just finding ways to decompress. I work a lot because I cobble together different jobs and I'm always learning. Like I learn like it's a competitive sport. So actually relaxing is a challenge for me. So learning ways to relax and relax my nervous system is really important. It's something that a lot of my clients deal with in counseling as well, is that they're very burnt out, stressed out, feel demoralized with the state of the world for good reasons. And so, yeah, finding things that actually do work. It's my sense that we have assumptions about nervous system regulation that mean that we should just like go from grinding away all day and then just be able to sit peacefully and meditate. And it's like, oh, that's like really, really hard on our nervous system to go from like very high stimulation to nothing. And so finding ways to like step down into calmness is something that I work on and I work with a lot of clients on. So yeah, I'd say hard skills and soft skills is like, yeah, being with people, I think is the number one skill. And being open and learning and eating a lot of veggies.
Love that. So the last question, as always, is how do you cope with grief and rage?
Yeah, aforesaid shit talking. Um, yeah, I think I really let myself like cry. Like if there's just days that I just feel I don't feel good about things, I think I'm okay to just like I'm just gonna crawl into bed with a kitty cat and have it out because sometimes you just need that. And I think I'm very fortunate to have an immense amount of power that I can also channel it into actual policy and action. But I'm in local government. I'm not the Prime Minister of Canada. I'm not, you know what I mean? So I think it is also being really, really aware of the scale of our power. I think sometimes when we get really deep into despair, it's because we think we're actually more powerful than we are. And even as somebody, again, who has decision-making power in a colonial government, I can't stop genocide in Gaza. I can speak out against it. I can, yeah, object. I can organize, I can do whatever it is, but I don't actually have that power. And so also knowing the bounds of power. And then I think also hyperlocal action can be really, really good. It's kind of that old adage, like think global, act local. When I feel really, really despairing, I try and go care for somebody. Like, hey, can I make somebody a meal? Can I send somebody a nice text just saying like, hey, I really appreciate you. Yeah, can I just take care of somebody locally or something locally? Can like I love picking up garbage in my neighborhood. I find that so cathartic. So I think it's like cleaning up my little corner of the world is
Mhm.
sort of it. And then yeah, just like I think acknowledging rage, especially as a femme like person, we're often not allowed to be angry. And so like my joke is like I live on rage and shiitake mushrooms. So I honestly just being like, like allowing like celebrating rage, like being angry, like swearing, like all those things that we are felt like we're not allowed to have, and I'm especially not allowed to have as like a Japanese woman. We're supposed to like be demure and all those things, all those stereotypes. So yeah, like kind of feeling juicy about that rage, I guess, like feeling like feels good.
Oh, yeah. Juicy about the rage. We love it. I'm so delighted that our paths have crossed. I cannot wait. I'm going to sell the shit out of your book, Nadine. It's so good. It's also so juicy, and I'm very excited to have it in my hot little hands and see it on people's shelves and see it in stores. And I can't wait to have you back on the show sometime when we know what the actual title is going to be. It might be Imaginal Disc, but is there more? We don't know. We'll have to have you back. Stay tuned for part two. Thanks for being on the show, Nadine.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the conversation.
As I said, the book is actually called Moss, Molt, Murmur, Contemplations on Nature, and it will be a great comfort for your soul. You can see it comes from a place of depth and precision and just a beautiful articulation of the worldview that I know many of you share with me. It will be an excellent gift for your tree hugging and hummingbird whispering friends. It will be a lovely resource in your therapy office waiting room. It would be a much appreciated gift for your like sustainability conference guest speakers in like their guest bags kind of thing. Like there's so many overlapping communities and concerns that are going to find themselves represented within its pages. So when you go to the link in the show notes, I'm telling you, buy several copies to save on shipping. And also because the publication day of Moss Molt Murmur is November 4th, 2026. So that's when it'll ship. You will receive it just in time for the holiday gift giving season. This would be a perfect hostess gift if you're like going to someone's house for dinner or holiday party. A lot of people are going sober these days, and a lot of us perimenopausal women like are having intense histamine responses to alcohol. I know I can't take it anymore. So like the idea of bringing a bottle of wine as a hostess gift is a little passe. Were I a hostess hosting, I would love this. Wrapped in a little pretty paper. If a house guest came for the holidays with this book in some pretty wrapping paper, I would be very impressed. You can order Moss Molt Murmur at ninthhousepress.com. I also highly recommend if you are big time reader, you like these themes, you're going to find 5 other books in the debut catalog that all carry these threads through. If you're a newer listener to the Numinous podcast, you don't know this yet, but this is what we talk about all the time. And these threads of these titles, you can get them all for a discount if you purchase the Power Reader Bundle. So the Power Reader Bundle of all 6 titles from the debut catalog, these have all been featured or mentioned on this podcast, by the way. So if you're like, I don't really know, you should just scroll back in the episodes and you'll see how this book and Farm Stand News by Marianne Unger go perfectly together. Assembly, the book of poetry and prose curated by Taranay Erfan, would go beautifully with this. Mother Juniper, beautiful with it. So you should go back, scroll back in your podcast player if you're not familiar. When you order the Power Reader Bundle, though, at ninthhousepress.com, you're going to get free shipping if you get that bundle. It's one of each title, 6 books total, plus a cute little tote bag. But you'll also get 15% off. So it's the best way to buy it. Pre-order now at ninthhousepress.com. You'll find the links in the show notes. And as always, we're over there in the Numinous Network talking about topics like this every day. Things like animism, anticapitalism, intersectional feminism, collapse skills, art making, creativity. We're doing stuff like that. Learning to rest. We're doing stuff like that. These kinds of topics are featured in our live calls every day. You should come join us in the Numinous Network for a month. Try us out for a couple calls. See if you like us. We are serving up contact nutrition in every somatics class. And you get a sense of support and stability without being put on the spot. We don't throw you into breakouts. There's no forced sharing or intimacy. So it's the same politics as this podcast, but a more soothing vibe, hanging out with like-minded others. You can check out the Numinous Network at carmenspagnola.com. CarmenSpagnola. Until next time, take care.